Hey, great to have you here. Back today with another horror movie review. This one specifically with Under Paris. So this is a movie that came out earlier this year, which I watched around when it came out and then just recently rewatched it for this review. It's one that I didn't particularly love on my first watch. I have grown to appreciate it a little bit more upon second watch, but I feel like when this came out, this was pitched, and I don't know if it was like the marketing team behind the movie or if it was actually fans of the movie, but it was pitched as, this is the next best shark movie behind Jaws. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. I mean, there's not a whole lot of great shark movies, but something like Deep Blue Sea, I feel like it's more of a popular choice I would probably give for that. There's probably other ones as well. Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times shark movies are done really over the top. Like, you obviously have like Sharknado or something crazy like that. So it seemed, I don't know, like it was definitely pushing for a marketing push with this one. But I gave it a try. And this is a French film, for those who aren't aware. It's on Netflix, but I watched it with the dub on it, so just had English voices just over the top, which I feel like was a pretty good experience with choosing to do that. But really the point of this movie, I feel like a lot of people gave a lot of criticism when it came out because a lot of it's heavy-handed, you could perceive as for climate change and so forth. They start off the movie with a fake quote, I want to say, that I feel like kind of gets the gist, the point of the movie, and I have it written down here. The species that survive aren't the strongest species, nor are they the most intelligent, but rather the ones who best adapt to change. And it says based on Charles Darwin, aka Charles Darwin didn't say this, but his research may have led to somebody saying that potentially. That's kind of the point of the film, is that there is an adapting of an ecosystem taking place here. Climate change has led to behavioral patterns shifts and evolution for this specific sharks in this French area. And you kick off the movie with somewhat of a prologue and having our main character who's on a boat and her team is underwater and they're exploring and they're studying these sharks, and it looks like they're trying to get a sample of one of the sharks that they're studying, and you can see a bunch of trash. So definitely sending a message there, which I would probably partially agree. There's a little bit of pollution that we probably do deal with today, so definitely tries to hammer that point home. And then you have them studying the shark down there, and as you expect with any shark movie introduction, things start to go haywire. The shark starts behaving erratically and kills everybody in the crew. She goes down to try to save her last person there, and she gets grabbed by the shark, and her like eardrums explode. You see like blood coming out. Pretty good visual there. There's a lot of CGI, I feel like, in this movie, but I'm not sure exactly what the budget was, so maybe they relied more on that than more practical effects, it seemed to be. But she gets like dragged, eventually gets cut loose from the shark and comes up with like blood coming out of her mouth. And then we get like the title card of Under Paris. Then we fast forward some time, and she's obviously the only survivor of that team who was underwater. So she is kind of isolated at this point. I think she's working at like an aquarium. One of the cons I would say for this movie is a bit absurd. You have one of the kids, and I know kids can be, a-holes and so forth, but you have one of the kids who's taunting her, being like, hey, wasn't your team eaten by sharks? And I'm like, dude, no, like, second grader's gonna have done the research on the presenter at the aquarium's background. Like, it felt like a little bit too much, like it was trying to hammer that point home, like, oh yeah, you have that memory, this is your backstory, remember? Like, it's not something you've forgotten at this point. She moves from that. She has a team approach her, wanting to study the sharks a little bit more, and she gets involved with them. There's also separately the discovery of these, I think they're World War II shells in the canals that they have at the bottoms of them. These shells that are just preparing to be active. They're just dormant at the bottom of the water. They discover those, which I think there's some truth to that from what I've seen, that those do exist, or they did exist, and those were discovered a few years ago. But those are down in there. You have the police trying to manage that and just kind of hinting at, hey, this may come up later. I feel like that's kind of the point of the shells being down there. And you have them warning, hey, the shark's here, because they have like a tracker on it, so they know it's around. And they do definitely this over-the-top mayor who is really just driving for political gain, and there's a triathlon coming up, and she can't cancel it because, this is big for her. This is going to be representing her, so she's like, just take care of the shark situation. And they advance a little bit with the story. They wind up getting to a point in the story, it gets a little crazy. There's a group of people who are like interested in the shark situation. They go down in these little tunnels underground, and there's like just water running along the canals, and there are people just standing, and there's a very small walkway around the water, which you just know is going to be trouble for them. They're standing there observing the shark, and the main character's like, hey, we can't let them do this. The person who is interested in the sharks has kind of gone a little AWOL and really trusts them and thinks that they are, world's greatest creatures and they're so harmless and all that. So Sophia, the main character, she gets kind of close to this guy named Adil, I think is his name, who is the police kind of lead main character. So it's kind of them two are the two leads, I would say. They go down there to try to resolve the situation. And you have the girl who's really into the sharks. She's like swimming with them. And she's like, no, they're fine. And then sure enough, you have the shark come up and you get that visual. I feel like a lot of shark movies do that, where it's like coming up through the water and you see like the top down angle of her getting eaten. And then all hell breaks loose at that point, where there's just chaos ensuing. And it wasn't as bad on second watch, but I remember watching this the first time and just seeing everybody freak out. And they're like pushing each other in the water to try to get out of there. It felt a little excessive. Like they were trying to go for that like Halloween Kills mob mentality situation where you're just disregarding everybody around you and your only goal is to get out of there. And everyone's falling in the water. You have the cops trying to help. They're falling into. Everyone's getting eaten because there's a bunch of sharks actually, because apparently the shark got pregnant. Apparently the shark can reproduce without the male at this point. So shark has evolved a whole lot. There's a bunch of sharks. They're all eating everybody. And they're all the humans are trying to get out of there. And they're just running down this further water spot where they're just continuing to get eaten. And it feels a little over the top. Obviously, it's playing into the whole shark movie situation, but it just felt like, is that believable that I'm just going to start shoving everyone? Like, there's literally people getting pushed. Like, it is not even, like, to your benefit. It's just, I'm going to shove you in the water. And it's silly, obviously. The movie, I think that's probably part of the problem. This movie, I don't know if it's trying to be serious or trying to be funny. I think, like, the Meg struggled with that a little bit, where it's like, hey, let's have this really serious plot where we're being scientists and there's a lot of in-depth knowledge here taking place and we're trying to send a heavy message, but at the same time, it's a fun, like, shark movie or a fun creature feature. Doing both of those things can be hard to do and hard to pull off and be effective in them, because on one tone, you're trying to send a message and be serious. On one tone, you're trying to satisfy the creature feature folks and have a fun, like, schlocky movie. Doing both of those in one movie, I don't think it works all that well all the time. So that kind of happens here, in my opinion. After that, they advance a little bit, and then we get to the triathlon scene, and they're trying to take care of the sharks. Sure enough, the sharks come in, and they start eating all the athletes in the water, and the mayor's like freaking out, like, oh, I thought this was all taken care of. Then we get a little bit of a reminder of those shells in the bottom of the water. They start blowing up, and they start blowing up like the infrastructure of the area, and sharks all come everywhere, and just all chaos pretty much is breaking loose at the end. People are getting eaten left and right. People are once again falling in from the street. So that seems to continue here. And you're ultimately left with our main two characters, Sophia and Adil. They make it, it feels like a heavy plot armor. Like they're underwater at one point and they're just traveling through, and the sharks are, of course, they're going for the other characters, and okay, that's fine, that happens because these are our main characters. That's okay. But they end the movie with Sophia and Adil just on top of this like spot where they're just resting, and the whole area around them is flooded, and you can kind of see all of Paris is pretty much underwater at this point, and maybe that's the point of the title being Under Paris. Previously, these sharks were just going through these canals, but now at this point, at the end of the movie, they're freely roaming the entire city of Paris because Paris has pretty much become underwater. So I don't know if they're going to continue this one. I feel like I heard when this came out that they were going to do a sequel. We'll have to see if that happens. I don't really feel like it needs one just based off how I felt this movie was. I'm sure there'll be a push to have one, and maybe the budget wasn't that high, so maybe it's reasonable to do. I don't know how well this performed like in France and internationally, because this being a French movie, maybe that was more of their target market, but I felt like, to me, it was a little overhyped as a movie, and I liked it marginally better upon second watch, but still is not something that I would overly recommend or overly say this is something you have to watch. I definitely wouldn't say it's the best shark movie since Jaws. I think Deep Blue Sea is probably still my answer for that. There's a few, obviously, but a lot of them get a little goofy. So that's kind of my overall thoughts. As far as score goes, I'm a little bit torn. I was debating between a 3 and a 4. I think I'm going to stick with a 3. So we'll go 3 out of 10 for Under Paris. below average in my opinion, not something you need to see. If you have nothing absolutely to watch and you haven't seen it, sure, go ahead, give it a watch, but it's not something I would recommend, nor will I likely revisit under normal circumstances. So that's Under Paris. Hit or miss. Probably can skip this one if you want to. So that's my thoughts. What are you guys' thoughts? Did you really like Under Paris? Is this your favorite shark movie since Jaws, or maybe even more than Jaws? How did you like it? I feel like when it came out, as I said, I got a lot of press and things like that. So we'd love to see your thoughts on this movie. But other than that, I appreciate you guys so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.